The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
We got another historic night to talk about, this time surrounding Tyrese Maxey and how he got on the same stat sheet as Wilt Chamberlain. What? Yes.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast.
54 points. PG looks more like PG. Justin Edwards doing his thing, especially on the defensive end for the Sixers. But Keith, let's start with this. Obviously, Tyrese Maxey. And I really try not to text you during games, because I know you're busy. I know you're hustling. I know you're taking your notes and all that good stuff. But I heard you ask the first question in the press conference, and it was like you and I were on the same page. And you were talking about this on yesterday's show. Tyrese Maxey did not go all out in that fourth quarter against the Raptors, unfortunately. Just got one shot off, no points, blah, blah, blah. You highlighted that Nick Nurse had told him, hey, man, we need you in that fourth quarter. You got to rev it up. Maxey, 16 points in the fourth quarter alone, en route to the 54 career point night for him, career high 54 points for him last night. Maxey was lighting it up for the Sixers late, Keith, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it is, just be aggressive. The last, and we talked about it. I didn't think that it was a problem of him thinking what he thought was the right play by getting teammates involved. But when you look at the roster, you need Tyrese Maxey overload to score points, and he bounced back. Now, this is the one thing he said in the locker room, too, when he talked about it. He said Nick was right, but Joel Embiid had a stat sheet waiting for him, and he pointed down and said, one shot attempt. You can't do that. And so it was basically Joel reinforced what Nick said, and Tyrese came out and performed well because of that. But yeah, when he's aggressive and everything is going right for him, he's going to get buckets, and they need that. Think about it. 54 points, and it takes you to overtime. So that just tells you how important he is for that team at this particular time.
I look at him in the fourth quarter against the Raptors, and I'm thinking, like, where's he go? Like, I understand they're D'ing him up well and all that stuff, but last night it just looked like he was in constant motion, and that's weird to say, I know, about a guy like Tyrese Maxey, usually in constant motion, but he was getting open, getting off the screens. His teammates did a good job of setting him. He really picked up in transition as well. The alley-oop, for instance, to VJ Edgecombe was something spectacular, and that was more on the defensive side on the assist side of things. But with Maxey last night, 54 points, 9 assists. Only he and Wilt Chamberlain are the only Sixers to be able to do that in franchise history. It was a pretty special night for Maxey to also not only just get his, but also be able to get his teammates involved as well.
Yeah, Maxey was funny, though, after the game, because he tried to kind of like downplay it. Like, I asked him that. I said, I brought up that you and Wilt were the only ones accomplished. He says, great, we won. That's what matters the most. But then another guy wouldn't let him off the hook, and I feel really great for that guy, the guy from AP. He said, but how does it feel about being in that company? And Maxey came back and said, blessed. I thank God for it. Anytime you're in a conversation with Wilt, who scored 100 points, you can't complain. Nah, bro, you can't. And the funny part is when we talk about it, Maxey talked about how when they played the Toronto Raptors and then when they played the Clippers, as soon as they tipped the ball off, they were face guarding. Like, they had a guy up in his face getting physical with him, this and that. I think Doc Rivers is going to regret what they did. They went out and they had a zone. And Maxey was able to maneuver through that zone. Typically, in a zone, you have a zone thinking that, it forces guys to shoot jumpers and do all these other things. And if you can't really shoot, it's kind of like you're going to get exposed, whatever. But Maxey, with his quickness, was able to get to certain spots. They weren't physical with him like the other two teams. And if you're not physical with him, he's going to torch you. And that's what exactly happened. But He was funny, man. He was trying to downplay the stuff about Wilt. Like, dude, before we're talking about Allen Iverson, we're talking about all these other guys. You and Wilt Chamberlain, but we got to win. That's all that matters.
You mentioned, the Iverson or Wilt and all that stuff. The side-by-side comparison of Tyrese Maxey right now and Allen Iverson's MVP season, it just works out because they wore the black jerseys last night again. But Maxey is averaging a little bit more than 2 more points per game than AI during his MVP season in 2000-2001. He's averaging about 3 assists more per game. He's averaging 1 more rebound per game. His field goal percentage is 5 points higher. Now, one of the first things I did look last night, what did he have? He had 54 points on, was it 34 shots last night? For some reason that's sticking out.
It was 30. He shot 18 for 30. 18
for 30. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So yeah, 5 points higher in field goal percentage and 10 points higher in 3-point percentage. Obviously a different game than it was 24 years ago, but still shooting 42.1% beyond the arc this year. That's what Tyrese Maxey's doing, 42.1 compared to Allen Iverson's 32% from beyond the arc. That's pretty remarkable. That's a hell of a season there. And he is now in sole possession of second place in points per game. And then I also looked at this, Keith. This is something that surprised me. I knew he led the league in minutes. I didn't know that he's the only guy to have over 600 minutes played. He's got 610 minutes played now on the season. The next guy I think is Franz Wagner with like 560. Like he has lapped the field essentially on how many minutes he has played. I know we've talked about this a lot with Paul George being healthy. We'll talk about him a little bit more coming up in the next segment. But Paul George working his way back. Hopefully Joel Embiid not too far off. Kelly Oubre is 2 weeks away. Is this just what we can expect for Tyrese Maxey for the season? Or is this just the here and now of waiting to get more guys back healthy?
Here's the deal, dude. At this particular point, you got to keep it up. You know what I mean? Like if you're anybody, like let's say if you're somebody that comes in now and you're seeing the type of year that Tyrese is having, you basically like if you start gunning and you start taking the ball out of his hands, people are going to look at you like you're foolish. And last night, Paul George, I asked him about that, about his running the offense and doing things in the half court. And he basically was like, look, man, I'm trying to help Tyrese out. Tyrese does a lot. I'm trying to set things up for him to get easier shots. So I feel like, if this might have been the first couple of games and then all of a sudden everybody else came back and then next thing you know, they're like, hey, we got to do ourselves. But right about now, you got to keep this up. You just have to, because this is his team. And like when we talked about it before, I felt like Paul George would be a guy who was willing to sacrifice some of his individual stuff to help Maxey out. And I think that moving forward, everyone is going to have to do that.
And let's talk about that Paul George when we come back. By the way, for the record, I do agree with you. Can't stop, won't stop at this point. And there'll be a game or 2 or 3, maybe down the line, where the Sixers have some kind of 20-point lead in the fourth quarter. And it's like, Maxey, you take the rest of the night off. I think he'll make up some time down the line, but certainly for the here and now, not a good idea.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I like to bet in the moment, whether it's building a same-game parlay or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit more juice to my Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to get started and place your first $5 bet.
This is the Spurs Postcast, your instant game reaction for the San Antonio Spurs.
San Antonio winners tonight, 135-126 over the visiting Atlanta Hawks. They wrap up a homestand 3-2, spearheaded by one of the more unlikely heroes, David Jones Garcia. Our hero on this program, Devin Brown, of course, NBA champion, hanging out with us as he does every night. I'm merely Casey Vieira. My friend, it takes a little of everyone. And tonight, I don't know how many more superlatives I have to acknowledge that it came from the most unusual of places, but Mitch Johnson played his hand right. He gave David Jones Garcia a chance, and he was the difference in this game.
Casey, I have something for you.
Okay.
Hey, my guy David Jones was balling tonight. That's all I got to say about that right now.
Let's tell them how they did it.
This is what you'll be talking about.
Oh, nothing like a little Elvis Crespo on a Thursday. All right, so Atlanta led this game by 6 after one quarter of play, but the second quarter is where things change for the better for the Spurs. They go plus 20 in the second quarter, leading by as many as 19. 46 points they actually have in the second quarter, spearheaded by David Jones Garcia, up in that lead up to 19 with his insertion into the game. Energy guy got things going. That deficit ultimately cut to 13. The Hawks did by the time it hits half. We talked about lack of discipline with this squad at times. There was a lack of discipline coming out of half once again because Atlanta catches fire and they chip into it that much more. And it's a 2-point game after 3 quarters of play. Atlanta takes the lead and it's a 1-point lead, so it's not a big lead. But the Spurs make the plays when it counts. They make the high-energy plays. They force a bunch of turnovers. And for the second consecutive game, they end the game on a big-time barrage or spearheaded by a big-time barrage. And it walks away. They walk away with a victory, a nice victory, one that saw them actually have a little bit of killer instinct to put a team down after they gave it back, and one that, Mitch Johnson and collectively the team as a whole is going to love at the end of the day.
Yeah, in the locker room, you're looking at it like this. Got off to a strong start. For everybody that was watching the telecast, you saw they get off. The first and fourth quarters looked great. I mean, one was at like plus 126. Fourth quarter is like plus 142, whatever the number was. That second and third quarter is where the Spurs are hurting themselves. Well, we saw that tonight. Now, Here's where I differ from you just a hair, Casey, because the Spurs, what gets them in trouble is late in the shot clock. Well, that only happened a couple possessions. Kelly Olynyk from the right side had to force up a 3. Jeremy Sohan and he's backing his guy down, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. Well, then he kicks it out late. I like to see him go up for that jump hook or make a move, right? Don't put Kelly Olynyk in that predicament when Kelly's been playing well for us. So here's the thing, and this is why I differ. They got a lot of good looks. It's just the aggressiveness wasn't there because I say this. When you're up 10, 12, 14, you got to continue to pound it down their throat, right? And we were taking a lot of outside shots, wouldn't let Atlanta get out on the fast break and get back into the game.
And, of course, Atlanta playing without Trae Young like they have a majority of the season, hurt his knee very early into the season. And they had actually come in playing very well against the Western Conference. 5-1, their only loss against Oklahoma City, had swept a 4-game road trip out west. The schedule makers haven't done them any favors. So this was a different-looking Hawks team, but a talented Hawks team, and understandably so why they came out and the Spurs eased up on the gas and they took advantage of it and they took that lead going into the fourth quarter. But to piggyback and turn back the car back to the David Jones Garcia thing, it was his insertion back into the game that ultimately turned the tide for the better.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
All right, so the Hawks go up by 101-100 at the 9:17 mark. Vassell hits a 3 to give the Spurs the lead back. Timeout Atlanta. So 103-101. Fox out. DJG back in. The Spurs at that point proceed to go on a 20-5 run to essentially take the lead, put the game away. In that stretch at one point, Atlanta went 4 minutes, I should say, with only 2 points, and spearheaded by, again, an energy player. And a thing that I liked about Mitch Johnson, what he did tonight, he rode the hot hand. And he saw that was infectious, that, okay, De'Aaron Fox, he's played well. Fox finished with a good line tonight. Oh, no, I'd be remiss not to remember the numbers. I didn't even get into that. Fox, 26, 5 boards, 9 assists. David Jones-Garcia, 12 points, 5 boards, 6 assists, and 3 steals. But he rode the hot hand, Mitch did, and he said, I'm going to ride this out for as long as I can. It's working. This is turning the game right now. And at about the 5-ish minute mark, 4 and change, that's when he brought Fox back into the game, and he left Jones-Garcia on the floor too. The two of them closed things out, or at least played about a minute or so more, and then David checked out of the game. Point being, though, you like what Mitch did on that front to not go classic by the book. A great job of reading what the game was telling him, and a big reason why things turned out the way that they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I love that. I love how you can tell you've worked in the media way longer than I have, because you say he rode the hot hand, Mitch. I say him and Quinn. All right, so Keegan Wallace and this David Jones Garcia, they both played in the G League. They were both first-time G Leaguers. Every time one was in, the other was in. That's a little NBA insider right there. Think about that. You have two guys. It seemed like, because Quinn went back to Wallace because he had hit 2, and immediately Mitch puts Jones Garcia back in there. And I'm going, oh, this is the NBA promoting the G League. Anyway, I digress. I'm gonna get out of that. I'm sorry. Let me get out of that case. I'm sorry. Anyway, that young man played well tonight. He forced his hand. Sean Elliott made a reference to it. Hey, he's forcing them to play him. Now, I love what they were saying about Jones Garcia. Now he's playing with the first team. He's got to get those guys involved. Yeah, he did that. And then like the next 4 or 5 shots he took, including a step back 3. So, hey, that's confidence right there. Love to see it. Young man played well.
Collectively, the team as a whole, they forced what decided this game was the fact that they forced 16 turnovers, and they got 25 points off of that because the field goal percentages for Atlanta were fantastic tonight. Right. 57% from the field, 54% from 3. Nickeil Alexander-Walker went off, had 38 on 13 of 17 shooting. He's been off to a nuclear start. It continues. But it speaks to what we've been saying about this team for a little while now. Was that they're, especially down, the point is emphasized even more so now, down Victor and down Castle. But what we said for a while about this team was that they're going to have to win games with their defense, win ugly, because even with the guys that we know that are supposed to be the playmakers, that offense stagnates in the half court at times, and it hits a rut. And there's points where that offense is really dull. And they need, well, the point that I'm making, even with it when fully healthy. So you knew they're going to hit that impasse now. But when you're playing defense like that, getting turnovers, getting out on the run, capitalizing on that, that's going to win you games. And it did tonight.
Yeah, no, hey, listen, Mitch can draw up all this stuff in the locker room, and I know he does, him and his coaching staff. But you gotta go out there and play, right? You gotta go out there and play. And at the end of the day, it's gonna look like that sometimes, Casey. That's what we had a lot of success when I was there in San Antonio, but there were games where us as players, we'd walk in there and it was like, that was ugly. But it's a win. It's better to win than it is to lose, right? So you want everybody to get a grasp of what it is you're doing defensively at the end of the day. Watch film tomorrow and get ready to head to Phoenix. But right now, these last 3 games, you're 3-0, not 0-3.
Yeah, and 11-4 on the season. Spurs taking care of business tonight. They finish a 5-game homestand, an eventful one. Ultimately, with a winning record, they go 3-2. Not much more you could ask for at that point, especially after you lose the first 2 games.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I like to bet in the moment, whether it's building a same game parlay or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit more juice to my Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to get started and place your first $5 bet.
A major shakeup in the Lakers basketball operations. Jesse Buss, Joey Buss, fired. It was shaping up to be a sleepy Thursday in El Segundo. You were at practice. What are we talking about? Not much. Guys are trying to get used to LeBron being there. Blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, bombs dropping. Major news. The entire scouting department basically fired Joey Buss, Jesse Buss, and a bunch of scouts, all gone. They were fired by the organization Thursday afternoon in a, at least from a timing standpoint, very surprising to pretty much everyone.
I was going to say, at practice today, none of the reporters, like the ones that I consider the most plugged in, seem to have had any inkling this was coming. Now, it's been very clear they saw this as both a possibility and then an inevitability, but nobody seemed to have seen this coming at all.
And so just from a logistical standpoint, it means, for people who don't know, Jesse Buss was essentially in charge of the Lakers scouting infrastructure.
There's no essentially. He was in charge of it.
I was not using his title, is basically what I'm saying. And that includes domestic and international scouting and things like that. Joey Buss ran the South Bay Lakers. And so, you have an influence, obviously, on who's on that roster, which can feed the big club. It influences the two-way contracts that are being signed and stuff like that. So, these are important people inside the basketball operation. They are generally considered to have been doing a pretty good job. At the very least, it can always be, Andy, a little bit tricky to say who is ultimately making decisions and this and that and whatever, although we will get to that again based on Jesse Buss's comments after he was let go. Jesse Buss wasted zero time in making his feelings understood, and a few shots fired across the bow of Rob Pelinka and his sister Jeannie Buss. But generally speaking, those areas that those guys were responsible for were seen to have been positive spots inside the organization over the last decade, kind of regardless with what was going on with Rob Pelinka and his, and his work with the main roster.
They were well respected around the league. You and I have always thought well of them. I know I've had, over the years, handful of conversations with Joey, more so than Jesse, but I've always thought he's a really sharp guy. And I think if you look at their overall track record, and also we'll start getting into some of the areas from Jesse's comments that reflect, if nothing else in Jesse's mind, achievements that he and Joey have had that aren't commonly linked back to them, but they think should be, and if nothing else, a lot of the credit that maybe has gone only towards, say, Rob Pelinka was not deserved.
Well, I mean, look, you look at the track record for draft picks, the track record for undrafted free agents, those are things that those guys are, the players that those guys are scouting, and Alex Caruso, Austin Reeves, those are undrafted free agents. If you look at their draft track record, most of the people that they've drafted are in the league and have had pretty decent careers, certainly relative to their draft position. This is a fascinating story for me because I think you can break it into two different sections. There is the question of the work. Was the work good? There's sort of how you organize a basketball operations department, all these other things. And then the other half of this conversation is the post-sale organizational structure of the Lakers, some palace intrigue, some things like that that are really unique, I think, to the context of the Lakers, and the fact that Joey and Jesse Buss were, and oh, by the way, still are, part owners of the team. They were the two no votes for the sale.
Interesting, though. Really quick, it is presumed, and for what it is worth, Ramona Shelburne was on Mason and Ireland on 710 ESPN, and paraphrasing a bit of what she said, but she has heard conflicting information about whether or not they were no votes. She has heard something to the effect of there were four, before Joey and Jesse even had their votes in, there were 4 yeses. So at that point, regardless of how they felt about it, it wouldn't have mattered because you already had the majority. So the sale was final.
Right.
And she's also heard that they were no votes.
I was just going to say, it makes sense that they would be because
they had the most.
These guys are younger than us. Like they would have, be ultimately the two who inherit the team in the long run. So it makes sense in that regard.
Well, they had the most to lose in the sense that they would be the ones that would inherit the team. Like the way the structure, my understanding, like the structure of will, trust, team, all of that was essentially, it would essentially be passed through to the last living kids, and them being the youngest that would stand to be them. But also, too, Jeannie obviously has been the governor and is currently seen as the one overseeing the whole operation during this transition with Mark Walter. But Joey and Jesse both had jobs within the organization. And with this sale, they could stand to, and it turned out to be the case, to lose their jobs. And as Jesse said in an interview with The Athletic, Dr. Buss, in addition to his vision of, Jeannie and Jim Buss, running the thing together, Jeannie on the business side, but with the ultimate say, Jim running basketball ops, that eventually Jim would retire and Jesse and Joey would have essentially taken over that. So I don't know. And I don't know how much that ever aligned with Jeannie's vision. Clearly not a lot, but from their perspective, if they either voted no or were very hesitant with getting on board or eventually realized they had no choice, they were the ones that really had the most at stake.
Well, for sure. And, and we'll talk a little bit more about this after the break, but this is ultimately the sort of final dismantling of, I guess, the sale to Mark Walter really was, but like in terms of the names inside the organization, this really is, I think, the last bit of, second to last bit, depending on when you think Jeannie's going to be done. But the sort of second to last bit of housekeeping,
buskeeping,
and the Buss era, yes, buskeeping. Because, like you say, those guys were the architecture was that they would eventually take over the basketball side of things. And so obviously that is not going to happen. And, it became much easier to move them out of the organization once the sale to Mark Walter went through.